Did you know that we're on social media? You can find us at facebook.com/criminallylisted and at criminally_listed on Instagram. Make sure you follow us to stay up to date on the latest news. Number 3. Crossroads Blues. It's a humid, bug-filled night in Robinsonville, Mississippi. The only thing around for miles is a juke joint, a bar with live music, gambling, and dancing. The twang of a guitar and the squeals of a harmonica accompany the peals of laughter and shouting, as 19-year-old Bob Johnson steps inside to check it all out. Bob's watching the birth of music's Delta Blues movement in 1930. Two men, Willie Brown and Son House, perform for the packed house, and Bob wants in. He played a lick or two in his time, so he asks to borrow Brown's guitar to show his stuff. Brown looks to House, dubious, but hands over his axe nonetheless. We wish we could tell you that Bob, aka Robert Johnson, blew the doors off the place that night, but, well, he just plain sucked. The crowd booed his off-key guitar wailing and vocal warbling. Willie Brown took his guitar back and shook his head. Robert Johnson fumed, angry, embarrassed, and made a beeline for the door. And he wasn't seen again for 3 long years. In 1933, a now 22-year-old Robert Johnson walked into a different juke joint in Banks, Mississippi. But now he had his own guitar, and he asked House and Brown if he could try again. House and Brown eyed each other and shrugged. If anything, it might be good for a laugh. Robert Johnson then proceeded to take out his own 7-string and turn himself into a legend. He was better than anyone else had ever been, period, they say. He made his guitar sound like a piano being played by 3 hands. But what had happened? Well, according to that Robert Johnson legend, the third hand at work might belong to Old Scratch, the devil himself. Little Robert Johnson had gone down to the Crossroads, where Highways 61 and 49 meet in Coahoma County, and sold his soul to the devil, just so he could be the best blues player there ever was, the king of the Delta Blues. After his triumphant return performance that night in Banks, the record producers took notice. They signed Robert to a contract. He recorded 2 albums worth of songs, many of which now are considered standards. He toured extensively and essentially became the 1930s equivalent of a rock star. But then he died at age 27, some say of pneumonia, others say of syphilis. And still others say he was poisoned by a jealous husband. Regardless of the cause, however, Robert Johnson's promising life and career was cut short, some say, thanks to his deal with the devil. It's a pretty great legend, but it's a long way off the truth. Though firm believers point to Johnson's own song, Crossroads, as proof it is true. On the other hand, detractors cite the lyrics in that autobiographical song as he went down to the crossroads, got down on his knees, and prayed to God, not the devil. Why would you go to the crossroad to sell your soul to the devil and be asking God to save you at the same time? Johnson's grandson Stephen said in 2022. The two just don't go together. So how did little Robert Johnson become so associated with the Faustian legend? Well, it might be due to a simple mix-up. Back in the 1930s, there was another up-and-coming blues pioneer named Tommy Johnson, no relation to Robert. Tommy was also considered something of a legend on the blues guitar, but Tommy played live a lot and didn't record very many records. In fact, his few vinyl pressings today are highly prized among music collectors. Tommy Johnson didn't share the praise Robert Johnson got in his final years, but he himself gave credit to his success to a pact with the Dark Lord. According to Tommy's brother, Liddell, Tommy once told him the story about how he became so great on the guitar. Tommy was heading down the wrong path in life. He was an alcoholic and an addict. One of his few recorded songs, Can't Eat Blues, is about drinking methanol from the cooking fuel sterno. So as far as his ability to play, Tommy's demons were holding him back. But instead of praying up to God to help him, as Robert Johnson had done, Tommy looked down to the devil. He told Liddell that one night he went down to the Crossroads a little before midnight. At the stroke of midnight, a large man appeared, and Tommy gave the man his guitar. The devil took a while to tune the instrument, played a piece that Tommy had only dreamed of playing, and then handed the guitar back to Tommy, before vanishing into the night. Tommy said that after that, he was able to play like he had never had before. That, Tommy said, is how I learned to play anything I want. Maybe so, but at what price? Number 2, the Abacus and the Cross. When people think of the Pope today, they often think of a religious leader. The very top of the Catholic faith, who shepherds his flock and makes religious decrees from on high. Many also eye the Pope's position today as largely ceremonial. But 1,000 years ago, the Pope was a much bigger deal. Back then, the Pope was a highly regarded and often feared world leader. A man who wielded tremendous power both politically and militarily. There were countless papal stories of espionage and assassination and political corruption from inside the Vatican. So when a Frenchman named Gilbert came along hoping to shed some much-needed light on the Dark Ages, more than a few eyed him with seething suspicion. Especially after Gilbert became Pope Sylvester II in 999, on the verge of the new millennium, YK1, if you will. But up until that time, Gilbert had been a priest and a teacher, but he had something that not many other priests had back then, a thirst for understanding about how the world worked outside of God's divine reach. He traveled extensively to broaden his knowledge and add to his stacks of books on physics, math, and astronomy. By the time he was appointed to the papacy by his friend Emperor Otto III, Sylvester wasn't your average pope in a pointy hat. He went about revolutionizing the way Europe thought of mathematics by throwing away those Roman numerals and instead using the numbers we know today, along with bringing back a powerful counting tool called an Abacus. It revolutionized the very act of counting in Europe and also revolutionized the economy. Sylvester was an inventor too, devising not only a hydraulic system for musical organs, but also crafting planetary models for the solar system that allowed him to predict the future position of stars and planets. In short, Sylvester II was probably smarter than your average pope, and that did not sit well with his contemporaries. His ability to predict the position of the planets, that was considered a form of sorcery. His reliance on Muslim inventions, such as our modern numerals and the Abacus, that was considered heresy. At least one man, a cardinal named Bayneau, went public with his belief that the Pope was preaching the, quote, false doctrine of demons, unquote. Bayneau was convinced that while Sylvester traveled to the Middle East to learn about that new math, he also entered into a pact with the devil while he was there. The deal being, Satan would reveal the dark secrets of the universe, and all he asked in return was Sylvester's soul. Others soon tuned into Bayneau's theory and added fuel to the fire. A Benedictine monk named Sigebert wrote that while Sylvester's inventions and knowledge were impressive, the Pope didn't come by them through study, but rather through necromancy, and that upon his death in 1003, Sylvester paid dearly and painfully for that dark knowledge. There were rumors at the time that the devil had told Sylvester that should he ever attend a holy mass in Jerusalem, the devil would come collect his soul whether the Pope was ready or not. According to some at the time, Sylvester went out of his way to avoid the Middle East after that, thinking that if he never set foot in Jerusalem, the devil wouldn't bother him. But then one day the Pope attended a mass, unaware that the priest had planned to recite the Jerusalem Mass in tribute. By the time the priest started the Mass and Sylvester realized his mistake, it was too late. Within days, Sylvester died a horrid and miserable death, according to Cardinal Bayno. According to the book The Abacus and the Cross by Nancy Marie Brown, as he died, the Pope prayed for mercy, begging that God cut off his hands, the hands that had invented those unholy things, and to cut out his tongue, the tongue that made the deal with the devil in the first place. Number 1. Devil of a Dream. In the 1979 song, The Devil Went Down to Georgia, Charlie Daniels writes about a meeting between the devil and a young fiddle player named Johnny. In the lyrics, the devil tells Johnny, "I guess you didn't know, but I'm a fiddle player too. If you care to take a dare, I'll make a bet with you." Daniel said he was inspired to write the song based on the works of writer Stephen Vincent Bayna. The fiddle contest is taken from his poem, The Mountain Whippoorwill, while the devil's part is taken from Bayna's short story, The Devil and Daniel Webster, about a farmer who sells his soul to Satan and hires a lawyer to get it back. In other words, it's a pretty great song, but it's not entirely original. In fact, the devil's association with the fiddle, also known in higher society as the violin, has a long and storied tradition in music history. The Catholic Church once banned the instrument because it could incite dancing. There were even some harsh-sounding chord combos that the Church forbid musicians from playing, because their demonic sounds seemed to come from the devil himself. But perhaps no other violin music has been associated with Satan more than Violin Sonata in G minor, also known as the Devil's Trill Sonata. The 14-minute piece is notoriously hard to play, even for experienced violinists, and it wavers from wildly melodious to discordant between just a few bars. Its composer, Giuseppe Tartini, wrote the piece in his early 20s at a particularly low point in his life. He was failing as a musician, unable to find work. His parents insisted he give up the music biz and get on board with their plan of him becoming a monk. As the story goes, Tartini stood upon a bridge and contemplated jumping off to end it all. But a notion struck him in that moment: he should wait to see just one more beautiful sunrise. Tomorrow, he thought, will be my last day. Tartini later relayed what happened that night to his friend, French astronomer Jerome Lalande. During his last night, as Tartini slept, he said he had a dream that the devil came to him with a proposal. The Dark Lord offered to make Tartini a musical genius with a shot at immortality in return for his immortal soul. Said Tartini of his dream meeting with the devil, "I had no idea of giving him my violin to see if he might play me some pretty tunes, but imagine my astonishment when he played a sonata so unusual and so beautiful, with such master and intelligence, and on a level I had never before conceived was possible." The devil's song took his breath away to an extent that Tartini said he woke up gasping for air. Immediately, Tartini picked up his fiddle and tried to replicate what the devil had played. By his own admission, however, his attempts were in vain. Today, the Devil's Sonata is perhaps Tartini's best-known work, and though he was ultimately happy with its reception, he always knew his composition wasn't close to the unholy brilliance of the piece he had heard. The Devil's Sonata falls so short of the one that stunned me in my dream, Tartini lamented to his friend, adding that had he been able to replicate it note for note after he awoke, he would have been happy to smash his violin to pieces, never to compose again. Then again, maybe it's a good thing he didn't do that, because the violin in question today is pretty famous, insanely valuable, and possibly cursed. It's thought that Tartini composed the Devil's Sonata on what's called the Lebinsky Stradivarius, made in 1715 by legendary violin maker Antonio Stradivari and bought by Tartini early in his career. In the past 300 years, this particular fiddle has only been known by a handful of folks, some of whom went on to meet untimely ends. Its current caretaker is Frank Allman of the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra. Thankfully, he was one of the lucky ones. On Monday, January 27, 2014, Allman was walking to his car after a performance at the Wisconsin Lutheran College. With Tartini's violin in a case by his side, 3 people approached him with guns drawn. One assaulted Allman with a taser gun. As he lay incapacitated on the pavement, the thieves took the case and sped away. Milwaukee detectives used good old-fashioned police work to eventually track down the devil's violin, valued at more than $5 million. And Allman made a full recovery, though he likely was more careful about keeping Tartini's cursed fiddle with him, lest the devil get his due again. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.